The hour was late, long past the city's mandated curfew. The cobblestone streets around Franklin's Press, a historic landmark in the city's old quarter, were deserted and silent. Shadows detached themselves from the darkness as figures on horseback, the hooves of their mounts muffled with heavy cloth, silently cordoned off the entire block. They were the Sentinels, an elite unit that answered to one man alone. Within minutes, they had a young man named Ethan pinned to the cobblestones. He was dragged before the lead rider, forced to his knees, his heart hammering against his ribs in the oppressive quiet. The man on the horse looked down, his features sharp and commanding in the faint glow of a distant street lamp. He recognized the captive. His voice was low, cutting through the night air. He asked where Leo was. Ethan, after a moment of stunned silence, was prompted by a harsh word from a guard beside him. The guard informed him he was addressing Chairman Julian himself and that he had best speak plainly. Relief washed over Ethan. He explained that Leo had disregarded his S and gone inside to investigate. He had given Ethan an instruction. If he wasn't out within the hour, he was to contact their allies in the Federal Reserve Guard and have the entire press surrounded and searched. Julian's next question was how long Leo had been inside. Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he admitted it had been well over an hour. He had seen no sign of the federal troops and was debating whether to call the local police when they had found him. Julian's jaw tightened. Just as he was about to order his men to storm the building, his chief of security, Marquis, rode up to report that someone was scaling the back wall. His men had held back, not wanting to cause a commotion. Julian spurred his horse without a word, gesturing for Marquis to lead the way. The back wall of the press was high, topped with a menacing line of rusted metal spikes. Leo, having torn strips from the hem of his dress to wrap around his hands, had just managed to pull himself onto the top. He was using the heavy sheath of a knife to hammer the spikes flat, trying to clear a path for the others. Below, a young man named Robert had crouched down, allowing a frightened young woman, Catherine, to stand on his shoulders. He pushed himself up, his body trembling from days without adequate food. He swayed, dizzy and weak, and Catherine, perched precariously above him, nearly lost her balance. At that exact moment, a dog began to bark. Leo's head snapped up. He looked down, reaching for Catherine's hand, but the barking had already alerted someone inside. A shout echoed from the courtyard. Men were coming, yelling about intruders. A pack of guard dogs burst into the yard, their barks turning into frenzied snarls. Catherine cried out in terror, losing her footing and tumbling downwards. Robert caught her, trying to shield her and fend off the dogs that were now leaping at them. Seeing the situation devolving, Leo was about to jump down into the fray when a voice called his name from the other side of the wall. He turned. Below him, framed by the moonlight, Julian sat astride his horse, his expression a mixture of severe anxiety and profound relief. Surrounded by his sentinels, he looked like a figure from a darker, more mythic age. A wave of joy shot through Leo. Julian simply opened his arms. He told him to come down. Without hesitation, Leo launched himself from the wall. Julian caught him securely, holding him tight against his chest, the frantic beating of his own heart finally steadying as he felt the solid weight of Leo in his arms. Several sentinels had already thrown grappling hooks, scaling the wall with silent, practiced ease and dropping into the courtyard. From the circle of Julian's arms, Leo looked over and saw the dogs fall silent, their aggressive snarls ending in choked whimpers. He knew they had been dispatched and finally allowed himself to relax. He told Julian he had found her, Catherine, the daughter of Senator West. Julian felt a surge of fury so intense it almost made him sick. He didn't care who she was. Her importance was nothing compared to Leo's. What was he thinking, risking himself like this? He tightened his grip on Leo's restless frame, his voice a low command to sit still. Leo shifted, settling more comfortably against him. He inhaled the familiar, crisp scent of cold air and expensive wool that always clung to Julian. All his tension evaporated, replaced by a rush of adrenaline and excitement. He explained eagerly that he had summoned the Federal Reserve Guard and that they had to secure the press. There was something inside, something terribly important. Julian took off his own heavy wool coat and wrapped it around Leo, who looked up at him with a grin, protesting that he wasn't cold. He said he was burning up, having just escaped from a cellar where he'd spent hours working on a stubborn iron lock. Julian pressed a hand to Leo's, his voice a murmur against his ear. He asked if he intended to conduct a search for criminals dressed like that. Leo suddenly went rigid, a hot blush spreading across his face. He had completely forgotten he was still in his disguise as a woman. The Federal Reserve Guard finally arrived, their armored vehicles and disciplined troops flooding the street. Residents who peeked from their windows saw the uniforms and quickly drew their curtains, wanting no part of whatever was unfolding. The sentinels had already opened the main doors of the press. The federal troops swarmed in, shouting for everyone inside to raise their hands and moving them into a central, empty room. A manager came running out, his face pale but his voice defiant. He stated that the press was the property of Senator Quillen and asked if the military men knew who they were dealing with. The troops responded by binding his hands and gagging him, placing him under separate guard. Julian and Leo walked into the main workshop, now brightly lit by tactical flashlights. Stacks of freshly printed books were everywhere, along with unbound pages of a poetry collection. Leo picked one up, his fingers flipping through the pages until he reached the end. There it was, the thing that, in another life, had sent Julian into a devastating rage and triggered a purge of his enemies. It was an excerpt from a short play titled The Senator's Daughter. The prose was florid and sensationalist. It told the story of a powerful political figure who, while traveling, met a woman from a common background. Captivated, he adopted her and brought her into his inner circle, calling her his daughter, but secretly forcing her into his bed. The story went on to claim that the senator's own son and heir was already in a secret relationship with this adopted daughter. When the senator discovered their affair, he furiously arranged a marriage for her to another man. She went to the altar pregnant and heartbroken. The son, unable to bear the loss, murdered his father and seized control of the family dynasty. The excerpt was the adopted daughter's deathbed confession to the new leader, her former lover. In it, she recounted their tragic history and begged him to look after their son. The new leader, in turn, promised the dying woman that he would cherish the boy, ensuring him a life of power, wealth, and influence. The language was crafted to be as scandalous and suggestive as possible. Leo felt the blood drain from his face, his lips trembling. He knew the collection was designed to be a weapon, twisting facts and fabricating lies to attack Julian, but he had never imagined it would involve his mother and himself. The implications were poisonous and clear. If this play were circulated at the upcoming Centennial Gala, read by countless influential figures and taken home by foreign diplomats, the truth would cease to matter. People are drawn to sordid, sensational stories. Father and son sharing a lover, patricide, an illegitimate heir. Every detail was perfectly calibrated to appeal to the public's appetite for scandal. No matter how many historical records proved the valor of Leo's mother or the integrity of Julian's father, they would be powerless against such a skillfully crafted rumor. people would start to wonder, did Leo's mother truly have affairs with 2 generations of the nation's most powerful family? How else could a woman with no connections have earned the trust of both men? And why was Leo, the so-called Marquis of Dalshin, so favored by the current chairman? Was it possible he really was Julian's unacknowledged son? And the old chairman's death, it had been sudden. Was there more to it? The 2 narratives would reinforce each other, and the lie would become a seed of dissent, waiting for a moment of crisis to explode into a fire that could poison legacies for generations. It was so vile that even he, for a fleeting moment, felt a flicker of doubt. He felt a chill seep into his bones, so profound he swayed on his feet. He wondered if this was what Julian's other rivals, Silas and Simon, had seen in that other life. It would explain their otherwise baffling paranoia towards him. A hand steadied him from behind, gently taking the pages from his grasp and tossing them back onto the stack. Leo looked up into Julian's calm, gentle eyes. Julian told him not to let the slander of petty men affect him. He turned, his voice now devoid of any warmth, and issued a series of clipped commands. All sentinels were to work in groups of 3 for mutual accountability. They were to collect every single page, pamphlet, and book in the workshop. Everything was to be gathered and incinerated immediately. He warned that anyone caught reading or hiding any material would be charged with high treason. Their entire family held accountable. Marquis took the order and began directing the men. Julian then instructed his security chief, a man named Dante, to take the manager for a private interrogation. He was to find out where else this collection might be stored and destroy it all, including the printing plates. The investigation into the author and all conspirators was to be pursued to the very end, with no one left out. All involved parties, including Senator West's daughter and the young scholar, were to be detained separately for questioning. They were to be given food, water, and medical attention if needed, but they were not to communicate with each other or be released. Dante acknowledged the orders and departed. A sentinel reported that a car was ready outside. Julian turned to Leo, his voice soft again, and suggested they return to the residence. He said Leo must be exhausted. Leo shook his head, his face still pale. He whispered that he wanted to see the books burn. The course of 2 of his lifetimes had been set by these pages. Julian said nothing more. He simply adjusted the coat around Leo's shoulders, pulling up the hood to shield him from the chill, and stood with him in the courtyard. He watched as his men piled the books and pamphlets into a small mountain in an open area and set it ablaze. In the roaring fire, countless pages curled, blackened, and dissolved into a cloud of swirling ash that rose into the night sky. Leo watched from a distance, his mind a storm of emotions. Julian simply stood beside him in silence. Dante returned after a preliminary interrogation to report on what Leo most wanted to know. The manager had confessed. He was an agent of a former political dynasty, the Norwoods, who had been defeated generations ago. He had used a connection with one of Senator Quillen's mistresses to set up the press. The manager had tried to protect the mistress, but Dante, knowing that Julian had already dispatched men to secure the senator's estate, bluffed that they already knew everything. The manager broke and confessed the entire plot. The mistress was the unrecorded daughter of the last Norwood patriarch, born to a servant he'd had a dalliance with. The official wife, fiercely jealous, ensured the affair was never documented. The mother and child were hidden away in a remote part of their estate. When the Norwoods fell, the mother took her own life along with the other women of the household. The girl, being young and without official title, was overlooked in the chaos and absorbed into the staff of the new regime. Years later, when Julian took power, He released many long-serving staff from the old estates. The girl was among them. Remnants of the Norwood loyalists found her, raised her, and indoctrinated her with a story of her lost heritage. They eventually maneuvered her into Senator Quillen's life, hoping he would become the next chairman. When his political star faded, they concocted this new plan: to spread the scandalous play on the Centennial Gala, destabilize Julian's government, and throw the country into chaos. They had hired several impoverished writers to help compile the collection, but the samples sent to the original poets for approval did not contain the final, damning pages. Those were to be bound in at the last minute. Tonight was the night they were scheduled for distribution to bookstores and influential patrons. The first print run was 3,000 copies. Dante confirmed that a count of the books in the workshop matched that number. He assured Julian that none had left the premises. Julian asked if the mistress had been apprehended. Dante confirmed that a team had been sent to bring her in for interrogation. Julian's orders were cold and precise. Senator Quillen's estate was to be sealed. No one in or out until the investigation was concluded. Leo then asked about Senator West's daughter. Dante, sensing his concern, offered a small smile. He explained that they had been questioned separately. The scholar, Robert, had given Catherine a copy of the poetry collection to show her his own work, which had been included. It was a sample copy without the final chapter. Catherine, however, was sharp. She noticed that the text in the early pages failed to observe certain traditional printing protocols for honoring high-ranking officials. Worried it would harm Robert's career, she snuck out to the press to warn him. When Robert confronted the manager about the errors, they were both locked away in the cellar. Neither of them had seen the slanderous final pages. Leo breathed a sigh of relief. Julian gently patted his head. He told him to let Dante and his team handle the rest. It was time to go home. Leo hesitated, murmuring that the original poets and the press workers were likely innocent. Julian rested a hand on his shoulder, assuring him that he would handle it properly. An investigation was still necessary. He remarked that he had glanced through the collection and it included works from many prominent families, including the sons of Duke Thorne. They all deserved a scare for their carelessness. Besides, he added, Leo had performed a great service. He intended to make sure all of them knew they owed him their gratitude. Leo looked at him, confused. Julian smiled, knowing the intricacies of political capital were lost on him. He simply guided him towards the waiting car, saying his chief of staff, Alex, would handle the details. After tonight, dozens of academics, poets, officials, and sons of the elite would be sleepless with worry, implicated in a treasonous plot. In a few days, Alex would draft a formal plea on Leo's behalf, asking for clemency for the unwitting participants. The political debt incurred would be immense. It would solidify Leo's reputation among the cultural elite and silence many of his critics. By the time they resolved everything at the press, the first hints of dawn were breaking. Julian took Leo in the car back to the residence. As the staff helped Leo out of his disguise and prepared a bath for him, they discovered scrapes and bruises on his hands and feet. A doctor was summoned immediately. Julian came to see him after he had changed. Leo was dressed in a loose silk robe, reclining on a chaise lounge while a servant gently dried his hair. Another knelt before him, carefully applying a soothing ointment to the abrasions on his knees and ankles. Julian stopped him from rising and sat on the edge of the chaise, taking Leo's hands and feet to inspect the injuries himself. They were minor, bruises on his elbows and knees, a few scratches from the spikes on the wall. Satisfied, he allowed the servant to continue, ordering the doctor to prepare a calming draft. After the fuss was over, Julian personally watched Leo drink the medicine and saw him to bed. But Leo's mind was racing, and sleep was impossible. Seeing Julian watching over him, he felt a pang of guilt and asked quietly if he wasn't needed at his morning briefings. Julian shook his head. He had cancelled them. He wanted the interrogations to proceed, and with the Centennial Gala tomorrow, his priority was ensuring the celebration went off without a hitch. Leo let out a long breath. He was glad their plot to ruin the chairman's celebration had been foiled. Julian smoothed his hair back. He told him to sleep. Leo replied that since Julian had a free morning and had been up all night, perhaps he should join him. There was a delegation of senators waiting for him in the South Wing. Sealing a fellow senator's estate and arresting dozens of prominent citizens overnight had sent shockwaves through the capital. He needed to go and calm their nerves. But Julian simply looked at Leo, then removed his shoes and outer jacket, and climbed into the bed. He pulled the covers over them both, wrapping an arm around Leo. He said he would stay for a little while and that Leo should sleep. Leo buried his face against Julian's arm, but his mind was still buzzing. After a moment, he asked if Julian would approve the marriage between Catherine West and Robert. Julian replied that it would depend on Robert's performance in the upcoming civil service exams. He assured Leo not to worry. Senator West was a practical man who adored his granddaughter and would not stand in the way of her happiness. Leo relaxed, closing his eyes. But another thought surfaced. He asked about the Norwood descendant, the mistress. When her father was alive, she had no status, no recognition. After Julian came to power, she was given her freedom and a pension. Why would she hate him so much, enough to orchestrate such a vicious scheme? The thought of being the target of such deep-seated, hidden hatred for so long, a hatred that had shaped his fate in 2 lifetimes, was terrifying. Julian explained that she had been manipulated. People had spent years telling her that if her father had not been overthrown, she would have been a princess living in luxury. They filled her head with resentment, turning her into a tool for their own ambitions. He dismissed her as having no real power, capable only of such pathetic, cowardly attacks. Leo thought to himself that in his first life, Julian's rival Simon had taken power. That mistress must have become a favored figure in his circle. She had wasted no time in arranging for his own death by poison. Julian, sensing Leo's restless thoughts, gently covered his eyes with his hand. He asked if he wasn't tired after such a night. Leo chuckled softly and tightened his arms around Julian. He asked why Julian hadn't inquired how he had so brilliantly uncovered the plot. Of course, if he were asked how he knew about Franklin's press, how could he explain it? He couldn't mention Simon. He'd have to start with the poetry reading at Duke Thorne's estate, how he noticed Robert and Catherine disappeared on the same day, and how he tracked a clue back to a temple. Julian sighed internally. He said nothing of this, only remarking gently that since Leo wasn't sleepy, perhaps they could find something else to do. Leo was still mentally constructing his cover story, trying to figure out how to explain his prescience. He was still trying to formulate a response when Julian shifted, moving over him. He tilted his chin up and kissed him, silencing any further thought. It was the kind of activity lovers engaged in. Leo's protests were lost in the kiss. He no longer had to worry about crafting the perfect lie. Julian was a man of action, who preferred to observe and understand through direct experience rather than words. Though Leo had started with a flicker of energy, the night's constant tension and physical exertion had drained him completely. The intense experience with Julian finally pushed him over the edge into a deep, dreamless sleep. He slept so soundly that he didn't even stir when Julian later cleaned him with a warm cloth. Julian looked at the sleeping figure with a mixture of exasperation and fondness. He pulled a silk sheet over him, careful not to wake him, then leaned down and bit the lip of the little troublemaker who had caused him so much worry. Only then did he rise and go to deal with the affairs of the state. When Leo awoke, he was disoriented, with no sense of time. Julian was busy all day. Dante had returned once, giving him a brief update on the interrogations before hurrying off again after ensuring Leo had eaten lunch. Everyone at the residence seemed to be in a flurry of activity, leaving him suddenly idle. He was bored, but Dante had warned him not to return to his own house. Too many people were desperately trying to get information about the case. It was better for him to remain at the residence, officially recovering from an injury. So he spent the afternoon in the library, reading. He ate dinner alone. He was a person who craved activity, and the boredom was maddening. He found himself rolling around on Julian's enormous bed, waiting until he eventually fell asleep by himself. In the haze of midnight, he was stirred awake. Julian was lifting him, dressing him in soft clothes. Leo blinked, confused. In the dim light, he saw Julian was wearing a formal, midnight blue ceremonial suit, intricately embroidered with 12 symbols of authority. His ceremonial headpiece was not yet on. Julian smiled when he saw Leo was awake. He told him to get up. He was to accompany him to the family mausoleum. Leo was still groggy. He was used to the endless ceremonies of state, having attended Julian as a guard at the mausoleum before. He didn't think much of it, grinning as he wished Julian a happy birthday and a long life. Julian reached out, his thumb brushing Leo's lips. He asked what gift his consort had for him. Leo said that Alex, his chief of staff, had surely prepared something. Julian replied that such a gift would be impersonal. Leo then asked what Julian wanted. Everything he had was a gift from him anyway. Julian's answer was simple. Today, he was to be obedient and listen to everything he said. Leo chuckled. He asked when he had ever disobeyed him. Julian kissed his forehead. It was a promise. A team of attendants, led by his valet, Peter, came forward to help Leo with his morning ablutions. He was startled to see the room was filled with staff, all holding various articles of clothing and accessories. He saw another group of attendants carefully placing a formal coronet on Julian's head. He knew this was the highest ceremonial dress and felt a pang of sympathy. He remarked that the clothes must be heavy. Julian, holding his arms out as attendants fastened his belt, turned and smiled. He said it would be over soon and told him to be patient. Leo found his patronizing tone strange, but the attendants were already there with a basin of warm water. After he had washed, Peter brought him a small bowl of bird's nest soup, which he quickly ate. Then the staff descended upon him, beginning to dress him. He felt a growing sense of confusion. He asked why he was being dressed so formally, noting that the garments didn't look like his official uniform. Julian's reply was matter-of-fact. The Empress must be dressed appropriately to accompany him to honor the ancestors. The word didn't register at first. The attendants worked swiftly, dressing him in a base layer of jade-colored silk with a black collar. Then, two women brought a magnificent outer robe of deep blue, with wide sleeves and a crimson lining woven with silver dragons. A multi-layered sash, heavy with jade pendants and ornaments, was fastened around his waist. The robe itself was embroidered with pairs of brilliantly colored phoenixes. His confusion deepened. Once the robe was on, he was guided to a chair, where servants knelt to put on his boots. Another attendant brought forward a coronet of 9 dragons and 4 phoenixes, glittering with jewels. Julian waved the attendants away. He took the coronet himself, approached Leo, and said he would crown his empress himself. The realization finally struck Leo with the force of a physical blow. This was the empress's phoenix crown. The entire ensemble was the ceremonial dress of the empress. He tried to stand, but Julian's hands were firm on his shoulders. He told him not to move, that the gown was hastily made and irreplaceable if damaged. He gently placed the crown on Leo's head, adjusted it, and studied him for a moment. He smiled. His empress was truly beautiful. Leo stared at Julian's perfectly serious expression. With the coronet on, its 12 strings of jade beads partially veiled his handsome face, but his focused, solemn eyes were fixed on him. Surrounded by the silent staff, Leo didn't dare openly defy him. He whispered, asking if this was a joke. The ceremony was important. Surely this wasn't because he'd seen him in a dress the night before and gotten some strange idea? On his birthday, right before he was to honor his ancestors. It seemed too frivolous for the ever-serious chairman. Julian smiled faintly. He told him to behave, and there would be a reward later. He took a translucent jade tablet from a tray held by a servant and placed it in Leo's hands. He instructed him to hold it carefully during the ceremony and not to drop it. Leo took the cool, smooth jade, his body moving on autopilot, his mind numb. He didn't know what was happening, but Julian was already taking his arm, leading him outside where a formal carriage waited. Inside the carriage, as it began to move slowly towards the mausoleum, Leo felt a prickle of fear. He glanced at Julian several times, but the chairman sat perfectly composed. Noticing his gaze, Julian simply smiled and took his hand, offering a silent reassurance. Leo whispered again, begging him to stop the joke. Julian's response was a calm question. Did he seem like a man who often joked? He told him to be still and trust him. Leo fell silent. He couldn't believe Julian was actually going to make him enter the family mausoleum dressed as the empress. When they arrived, Julian led him from the carriage, their feet stepping onto a long crimson carpet. They walked through the east gate and towards the main entrance of the mausoleum. Leo couldn't resist a glance down the steps. The sky was still dark, but he could see the courtyard below packed with kneeling figures. All the highest officials and nobles of the state, dressed in their own formal ceremonial robes. His heart faltered, his legs suddenly weak. Julian squeezed his hand, guiding him forward into the mausoleum. Inside, the air was thick with incense. Offerings were laid out before the ancestral tablets, and candles flickered in the cavernous space. Julian's uncle, the elderly Duke Arthur, the keeper of the family records, stood waiting. Seeing them enter, he showed no surprise. He held his own jade tablet and announced in a solemn voice for the spirits to be welcomed. Julian led him to kneel. They performed the full set of prostrations. Then began the long, complex ritual of offerings. Leo moved mechanically, following Julian's lead, kneeling, bowing, rising over and over, his mind completely detached from his body. Duke Arthur began to read a long invocation in a droning voice. Leo understood none of it until the final words, and then they were bowing again, burning ceremonial money. Another long invocation followed to send off the spirits. The scent of burning incense and paper filled the vast, dark hall. Surrounded by heavy, ornate draperies, Leo bowed and prostrated himself beside Julian, feeling as though the spirits of countless past leaders and their consorts were watching them from the shadows, bestowing their blessing upon him. When the ceremony was over, Julian led him out of the mausoleum and back to the carriage. Once inside, Leo felt the tension finally leave him, and he let out a long, shuddering breath, realizing his back was soaked with sweat. Julian turned to him and smiled, putting an arm around his waist and asking if he was tired. Leo whispered, his voice full of disbelief, that this was utter madness. He couldn't believe Duke Arthur had gone along with it. Julian's reply was simple. He had already added Leo's name to the official family registry. Today, he had informed the ancestors. From now on, he was Empress Leo. Leo stared at him, horrified, asking if he was serious. Julian assured him he was. He knew Leo valued his freedom, and a public announcement of a male empress would bring unwanted scrutiny. But registering their union in the family records and informing the ancestors was a necessary step. He told him that when they died, his memorial tablet would be placed here as well, to receive the offerings of their descendants. There would be a place for him in his tomb. Leo was stunned into absolute silence. Julian gently stroked his hair. He thought to himself that, at least in this life, he hadn't let anyone else get there first. A marriage was a marriage. He could do it too. He wouldn't admit that the idea had only struck him the night before, when he saw Leo in that dress. He had spent the entire day in a frenzy of activity, having the ceremonial gown and crown made, and most importantly, convincing the stubborn Duke Arthur to permit the secret investiture of a male empress. In exchange, he had promised to adopt a clever young heir from the Duke's own branch of the family. But all that effort and stress vanished the moment he saw Leo, dressed as his empress, kneeling beside him in the mausoleum. He was filled with a profound sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. The carriage stopped. Julian once again took Leo's hand, leading him out. Still in shock, Leo followed him into the main hall of the private residence. Attendants brought forward ceremonial wine. Julian took his hand and smiled. He said it was now the Empress's turn to wish him a happy birthday. He lamented that there was no court of ladies for Leo to lead, but he didn't need one. He only needed him. After the Empress's toast, he would have to go to the front hall to receive the official congratulations from his ministers. Leo stood there dumbly as a servant placed a goblet in his hand. He raised it, intending to offer the traditional wishes for long life and prosperity, but a lump formed in his throat. His eyes blurred, and before he knew it, tears were streaming down his face. Julian chuckled softly. He took the goblet, drained it in one gulp, and handed it back to the servant. With a wave of his hand, all the attendants silently withdrew. Julian pulled Leo into an embrace. Leo buried his face in his chest, his heart aching with an overwhelming mix of joy and sorrow, and began to sob uncontrolled. Julian held him for a while, but the crying didn't stop. He carried him to a back chamber and laid him on a couch, then tilted his chin and kissed him until his cheeks were flushed and his body went limp, leaving him breathless and teary-eyed. Julian held him in his lap and smiled. He remarked that his empress was really quite young. So young that a single kiss was enough to stir his passions. The comment made Leo blush even more deeply. Julian began to unfasten the complex ceremonial gown, his hands slipping inside as he kissed him again, more deeply this time. The Empress's birthday tribute took nearly an hour, almost making Julian late for the official state ceremony. As he stood in the grand hall, fully composed in his formal attire, receiving the bows and well wishes of his ministers and foreign dignitaries, his mind was elsewhere. He sat on his high throne, listening to the booming voice of the master of ceremonies and the eloquent praise of the prime minister. He watched the processions, heard the music, and saw the coordinated bows of hundreds of officials. The entire nation was celebrating him. But all he could think about were the red-rimmed, lovely eyes of his empress, and the long, pale legs revealed as the heavy blue silk gown had slid to the floor. The new empress had been crowned. He would have to be sure to dote on him properly. After the formal state reception, a grand banquet was held in the palace gardens. The gardens were a spectacle of colorful lanterns and silk banners. A floating pavilion had been constructed in the center of the lake for acrobats and musicians. Leo, having finally changed back into his own official uniform, wandered through the crowd. He was the man of the hour. People constantly approached him, trying to subtly pry for details about the recent arrests. The case of the Sias book had shaken the capital to its core. Senator Quillen's estate was still under lockdown, and even Duke Thorne's 2 sons had been detained. Leo deflected the questions with vague answers until he grew weary of the game. He looked up at the high dais where Julian sat, his posture perfect, his expression serene and regal. As if sensing his gaze, Julian turned his head slightly and their eyes met for a brief moment. The glance sent a jolt of heat through Leo. His legs still felt weak from their earlier encounter. He was filled with a fierce possessiveness for the man on the throne, the man who commanded the respect and fear of all these people. They offered him fawning praise and wrote him elaborate poems, while he looked down on them with the cool detachment of a god observing mortals. And yet, just a short while ago, this same godlike man had held his ankles in a grip that almost bruised. His dark eyes intense with a love so fierce it felt like he wanted to consume him whole. It was like a mortal possessing a deity. The secret pride and joy of it made him want to escape the crowd. He was afraid he would stare too long at his beloved god. He slipped away and went up to a balcony overlooking the main city streets. From there, he could see the public celebrations. Every street was decorated with pavilions and lights. Performers juggled and sang, shops were adorned with lanterns, and the air was filled with the sound of gongs, drums, and firecrackers. The streets were a sea of people, and every bar and restaurant was filled to capacity, a picture of peace and prosperity. He thought with a shudder of relief how fortunate it was that they had found that book. A voice next to him suddenly asked if he had found the Sias poems. Leo jumped, turning to see Silas, Julian's rival cousin. Silas smiled. He remarked that Simon, his brother, was finished this time. In the last life, he said, those people had refused to confess, and Simon had tried to pin the blame on him. He added that he had done his own investigating and traced the plot back to one of Simon's mistresses. Leo just pursed his lips. He was in too good a mood to start a fight. Silas sighed. He admitted that Leo was impressive and that he was curious how he had managed to earn Julian's absolute trust, as Julian was not a man easily swayed. Leo asked him why he was always focused on how to use people. He asked if he could ever just be himself. He then inquired about Silas's mother's eyesight, asking if, in this new life, he had found a doctor for her or done anything to improve her situation. Silas's smile seemed genuine. He said her eyes were much better and she had stopped doing fine embroidery. His financial situation had improved as well. He thanked Leo for asking. Leo replied that she had always been kind to him. Silas agreed, saying his mother always said Leo had a pure heart and was a good child. Given his excellent mood, the fact that Silas had provided the tip that averted this crisis, and it being Julian's birthday, Leo was feeling unusually magnanimous. He offered a piece of advice: try being a good person. Silas asked if being a good person would make Leo come back to him. Leo glanced at him. No, he said, but it might make him more merciful when the time came. Silas laughed. He asked if Leo was so sure he would win. Leo countered with a question of his own. Who was it that first told him he was Julian's illegitimate son? Silas answered without hesitation. It was Simon. Leo wasn't surprised. Silas admitted that he sometimes wondered why he had ever believed such a foolish rumor. Leo's response was blunt. He had simply weighed his options and decided the throne was more important. Silas looked pained. He said Leo's clarity in this lifetime was astonishing and asked if he couldn't spare his feelings just a little. Leo's eyes crinkled in a smile. He said he hadn't changed at all. Silas conceded the point. He noted that Leo was always easy to read. For example, it was obvious he was in a very good mood right now. Leo just smiled without answering. Silas looked closer, noticing the slight redness around his eyes, as if he had been crying recently. But there was a relaxed, confident air about him, a certain glow that Silas found captivating. He leaned in, about to say something more, when a young woman hurried towards them and dropped to her knees, her face streaked with tears. She pleaded with the two men to have mercy and help her. Silas looked disappointed. Who knew when he'd find Leo in such a receptive mood again? Still, he maintained his gentlemanly demeanor. He asked Miss Thorne to rise, reminding her that it was inappropriate to be weeping in the palace on the chairman's birthday. Tessa Thorne composed herself, whispering that she had forgotten her manners in her panic. She explained that federal agents had arrested her two brothers the previous night. With their family elders out of town, she had no one to turn to and couldn't get any information. A family friend had managed to get her into the banquet, but she didn't dare approach the chairman directly. She said she knew few people and was forced to appeal to them. She swore her brothers were lazy but would never do anything truly criminal. She feared they were caught up in something they didn't understand. Silas glanced at Leo, who remained impassive. He knew this must be related to the Sias book, but as the investigation was secret, he couldn't let on that he knew anything. He told her not to worry, that the chairman was wise and just. If her brothers were merely unwitting accomplices, they would be safe. But safe did not mean their careers were secure. This did little to soothe Tessa's fears. She remained on her knees, saying she had heard that Marquis Leo was a high-ranking official in the Justice Department. She begged him to tell her why her brothers were being held. Leo's response was cold. The matter was classified. He knew nothing of the details, and she should wait for the investigation to conclude. Tessa was about to protest further when Leo raised his voice slightly. He called for the guards on duty. Immediately, two sentinels appeared, clad in their dark uniforms, and knelt before him, awaiting his command. Silas's expression flickered. He hadn't realized Leo could summon guards with a simple call. The fact that the sentinels were not just present but actively protecting Leo, under the guise of being on duty, was a revelation. Only the chairman himself commanded that kind of immediate personal protection within the palace. Leo calmly instructed the guards that Miss Thorne was lost and to escort her to the area where the ladies of the court were gathered. Tessa, desperate, threw herself forward, grabbing the hem of his boots. She cried that she knew her siblings had been rude to him in the past, but she begged him to be magnanimous and spare her brothers. She had heard whispers that the case was being treated as treason and was connected to a book of poetry. She was terrified. She was convinced that this was Leo's personal revenge for past slights. Leo was shocked by her accusation, then sneered. He told her she overestimated herself if she thought he would use his position for such petty revenge. He turned to a guard and ordered him to go to the chairman and inform him that he had urgent business to discuss. He was to ask the chairman to meet him at the lakeside pavilion, and to bring Miss Thorne so she could make her case to him directly. Silas tried to intervene, suggesting that interrupting the banquet was unwise, but one of the sentinels had already acknowledged the order and was heading towards the main garden. Leo stepped back, fastidiously dusting off his boots with a handkerchief. He announced he was going to the pavilion. Tessa hesitated, looking to Silas, who simply advised her to go. He said that with Leo's introduction, the chairman might grant her an audience. As she followed, Silas accompanied her. Tessa whispered that she had lost her composure and would apologize to Leo later. Silas inwardly shook his head. The Duke's granddaughter was remarkably naive. The lakeside pavilion was cool in the early winter air. When they arrived, Leo was already there, pouring himself tea. Attendants were quietly preparing a fresh pot. He didn't even look up as they entered. He picked up an orange and began to peel it slowly. Soon, they heard footsteps, and Julian entered, escorted by his staff. He was smiling, but his expression turned neutral when he saw Silas and the young woman. After they offered their greetings, he asked Silas if he had something to report, then turned his gaze to Tessa. Tessa, who had been awestruck since Julian entered, hastily knelt again and repeated her plea, this time carefully omitting any mention of personal revenge. She simply expressed her fear and confusion, begging for the chairman's guidance. Julian, who had been in a good mood, listened patiently. He smiled faintly. He told her he was aware of the situation and that he himself had authorized the Justice Department to treat all suspects equally, including her brothers. He said that while this was a false alarm for them, it was a necessary lesson. They had been lazy and careless since arriving in the capital, making friends indiscriminately and allowing themselves to be used by criminals. He hoped they would be more prudent in the future. He then instructed an aide to have her escorted home and to send a gift of fine silks to calm her nerves. Once Tessa was gone, he looked at Silas and asked if he was also there to plead for the Thorne family. Silas bowed his head respectfully, stating that he would never interfere with an official investigation. He explained he had merely been speaking with Leo when Miss Thorne approached them. Julian nodded, remarking that Silas was always cautious, which was why he trusted him. He then informed Silas that he had a new assignment for him, a confidential directive that would be delivered to his residence. After Silas bowed and took his leave, Julian walked over to Leo. He asked, with a smile, who had angered his empress. Leo ignored the teasing and asked what task he had given Silas. Julian, amused that Leo's anger had been so easily replaced by curiosity, explained. He had given Silas a secret order to search the Duke's branch of the family for a clever, suitable young boy to be chosen as Julian's adopted heir. Leo's eyes lit up with malicious glee. He struggled to suppress a laugh, adopting a serious expression as he told Julian that this seemed unwise. Silas had been the leading candidate to be heir. This new task might drive him to sabotage the process. Julian, seeing right through his act, smiled. He said Silas wouldn't dare. He explained that Silas, being paranoid and meticulous, would see this as a test. He would suspect that Julian had given the same task to others to compare results. Therefore, he would carry out the order perfectly, without a hint of emotion, to prove his loyalty. Furthermore, Silas was still banking on a potential border crisis, which he believed would force Julian to choose an adult heir to ensure stability. He would do the job, believing Julian would ultimately abandon the plan to adopt a child. Leo chuckled to himself for a moment, then a thought struck him. Duke Arthur. He realized that this must have been the deal. The promise of an heir from his line was the price for the Duke's agreement to their secret union. He looked at Julian, a new understanding dawning. Julian had always been a master strategist. But to do this, for him, Julian sat beside him, putting an arm around his shoulders. He admitted that he had originally planned to choose an adult heir. It was simpler than raising a child himself for years, only to risk him becoming a disappointment. He said that when they first got together, he had assumed their relationship would be temporary. He was older, and he figured one day Leo would want to marry and have a family, or Julian would be gone. He wanted Leo to be happy and protected, even if it meant finding someone else. But, he confessed, he had recently realized he could not tolerate the thought of giving him to another. He could not permit Leo to be with anyone else, man or woman, as long as he lived. He wanted to grow old with him, to be buried with him. He told him, his voice quiet but absolute, that Leo was his in life and would be his in death. Leo's breath hitched. He thought to himself that he felt the same. He could never give Julian to another. But Julian was the chairman. How could he have ever dared to dream of such a thing? Julian, mistaking his silence for fear, began to gently persuade him. He pointed out that if Leo loved someone else, he would want a proper public marriage. Julian couldn't offer him less. Their union was a matter of state as well as a private affair. By secretly registering him as his consort and choosing a young heir, he had found a solution. He told Leo he would be the boy's tutor. If Julian was gone, Leo would be regent. And if the boy proved disloyal, Leo was to depose him and choose another. While Julian lived, Leo was his empress, ruling beside him. When Julian was gone, Leo would be king, ruling alone, and Julian would wait for him in the afterlife. Later that evening, after further questioning, the Thorne brothers were released. They returned home, shaken. Tessa proudly recounted how she had secured their freedom by bravely petitioning the chairman. But she also spoke with a new, sharp clarity. She pointed out that Leo, a man with no blood ties to the ruling family, wielded more power than they, the chairman's actual maternal relatives, ever could. He commanded the palace guard as if they were his personal servants and could summon the chairman with a word. The source of his power was simple: the chairman's favor. She argued that waiting for a theoretical future where Silas might become chairman and marry her was a fool's game. Why not aim for the man who held all the power now? The chairman was in his prime, and his private life was notoriously empty. She declared her intention to become the empress herself. Her brothers were stunned by her audacity, but she argued that with the chairman's favor, they could become powerful uncles to the throne immediately, rather than waiting decades for a prince to inherit. In the residence, Leo was unaware that someone was already plotting to usurp his new, secret position. He lay on a chaise, thinking about Julian's words, feeling a mix of elation and anxiety. Dante came in and informed him that the Norwood woman had taken her own life in custody, confessing to everything. Senator Quillen, in a desperate act of self-preservation, had petitioned to have his son Simon disinherited and his own regional military authority revoked, begging only that his son's life be spared. Julian would likely accept. The crisis was over. Dante then presented Leo with a heavy bronze token, the command seal for the elite sentinels. He explained that Julian had ordered it. Never again was Leo to be in a position where he called for troops and they were delayed. As Dante prepared to leave for a new post far away, he looked at Leo with a knowing smile. He remarked that Julian had been terrified the other night. The chairman had done many things in the past few days that had shocked even the old duke. But in the end, he had gotten what he wanted. The name of the nation's first male empress was now inscribed in the official family records. The chairman, he mused, had never cared much for history books or what future generations might say. If he had, he would not have been alone for so long. The Centennial Gala passed peacefully. The case of the Sias book concluded with Senator Quillen's political decline and his son Simon's exile from the capital. As the first snows of winter fell, a sense of calm returned to the city. On a mountain road covered in slushy, melted snow, a trade caravan had stopped at a post house. An old man, the patriarch of the group, was informed that the young master of a neighboring caravan, a Mr. Zhou, wished to purchase some of the rare silver perch they were transporting live in insulated tanks. The old man, Duke Thorn himself, initially refused. He explained they were a gift for a relative in the capital who had loved the fish since childhood. The young master, who was in fact Leo in disguise, traveling with Julian's cousin Simon, accepted the refusal with grace and courtesy, impressing the old duke with his good manners and refined bearing. That night, a severe stomach ailment, an old affliction, struck the duke. He lay in his cold, damp room at the inn, groaning in pain. Leo, in the next room, heard his cries. He went to check on him and, finding the old man suffering, offered his help. He gave him a dose of a potent royal medicine he carried, wrapped him in his own luxurious fox fur cloak, and used his rudimentary knowledge of acupuncture to ease the pain. The Duke, touched by the kindness and attentiveness of this young stranger, found himself opening up. In the quiet intimacy of the sick room, he confessed the great regret of his life. He spoke of a young relative he had raised, a brilliant but stubborn boy. This boy, he confided, had declared he had no interest in women. The boy's mother, desperate for an heir, had begged the Duke to cure him. In a misguided attempt to force the issue, the Duke had drugged the boy's food and locked him in a room with several young women. The boy, in a desperate act of defiance, had slit his own wrists. He nearly died, and the scars on his arms were a permanent reminder. The attempt had shattered their relationship. Later, the boy's mother, hearing rumors that her son had grown close to a young doctor, became convinced the doctor was a corrupting influence. She had the Duke use threats and bribes to drive the doctor away, permanently severing her son's first real bond of love. From that day on, the boy, now Chairman Julian, had hated him with a cold and unforgiving fury. Leo listened, his blood running cold. He thought of the faint, silvery scars on Julian's forearms, scars he had always assumed were from battle. A wave of profound, aching love and protectiveness washed over him. The next morning, he left the Duke his remaining medicine and the expensive fur cloak and hurried on to the capital. He arrived back at the residence in the afternoon. Julian was in meetings, so Leo waited in his private chambers. Exhausted from the journey and the emotional turmoil of the previous night, he fell asleep on a chaise, wrapped in one of Julian's blankets, the familiar scent of sandalwood calming his frayed nerves. Julian found him there, sleeping soundly. He woke him gently for dinner. Leo, still hazy with sleep, pulled him into a fierce, loving kiss that quickly deepened. Later, as they lay together in the quiet of the night, Leo's hand traced the old, faded scars on Julian's arm. He asked if they still hurt. Julian, surprised by the question, said they had healed long ago. Leo lowered his head and gently kissed the scarred skin. Julian, sensing the deep, unspoken emotion behind the gesture, simply held him closer. Leo asked him how, with his parents still alive, he had found the strength to resist them, to remain unmarried for so many years when he had been raised to do his duty. Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he said that he had wavered at times, for his mother's sake. But in the end, he could not live as a puppet, a mere shell of a chairman. He quoted an old philosopher, "After wrestling with myself for a long time, I would rather be myself." Leo tightened his grip on the scarred arm, his heart full. He thought, "He is mine. I will never let anyone take him from me."